breakthrough which you have gotten. So the next step now is the drug.
And one of our major outcomes is that we have found a drug that kills very effectively the kind of breast cancer that affects us most here.
This program tries to work in the area of developing technologies for improving on mining and minerals processing. So we focus on barytes and gold. These are two major areas: barytes to address the oil industry, gold to address what is happening in places like Zamfara, looking at the issue of safe mining.
We need to refine our crude oil, and one of the things which we need to do so is drilling mud for us to really tap this crude oil from the oil source. And for us to do this, we need aerating engines, of which barite today has been taken as a better substitute to those ones which have been used earlier for now. So we feel it's actually adding values to those things. We help us stop the importation of barite into the country.
So it is this PAMI project that has enabled us to get to a level where Total is now talking to us, and we are now working with them. We're also receiving additional support from them. And their interest is to make sure that in the near future, the oil industry in Nigeria can source barytes from Nigeria.
We are quite happy, with the level of achievement of most of our students and the kinds of interactions that they bring to bear, on the university itself.
The remaining centers are focused on health issues or medical issues. The first one we speak about is that in Redeemers University, and that is a center on genomics of diseases.
SGID is the African Center of Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases, and SGID has a mandate to build a critical mass of African scientists that are well trained in genomics and that can use genomic tools toward elimination or eradication of the infectious disease. Then the other mandate for SGID is actually to develop genomic curricula, because these are curricula that never existed in the African university landscape, and we've already introduced two, and which were approved by NUC.
When you talk about any particular disease, especially infectious diseases, you want to talk about us solving our own problem.
Our overarching goal is actually to, what we say, create an environment where Africans can come in and then do high quality, valuable, ethical genomic translational research to solve health problems in Africa.
I'm glad today that we have not only proved that great things can happen in Nigeria, we've also been able to prove that Redeemers University, a private university, can go where angels were not there.
SGID has made Africa enter the annals of medicine by successfully diagnosing the first case of Ebola in Nigeria and then guiding the Nigerian government through the process of containment of that outbreak.
It was here in SGID that the infection was confirmed in Nigeria. And it played a prominent part in curtailing that outbreak, what could have been disastrous for the entire nation.
The Lassa fever that people are talking about now, the diagnosis tool resides with us.
Last year when we had this outbreak, the monkeypox, samples were coming in, and last year alone we analyzed well over 100 samples, and then by January this year another 44 samples came in and we've analyzed that. So that tells you that we are well able and capable to do all of this analysis.
When Ebola struck in the US in 2014, within 48 hours, we had on our campus a delegation of the US CDC and a delegation of the US AID. And the question was, they wanted to come and find out what miracle we were doing. They were very, very, very clear about the mandate, that they were coming to learn from us how we've been doing it and how successfully we've been able to do it.
And the team have been working with the specialist hospital in Irua on Lassa fever. and have done a fantastic job developing rapid diagnosis tests for Lassa.
Area Specialist Teaching Hospital was because that is one area where Lassa fever is endemic.
Within 4 months of the Ebola outbreak, we did something that has never been done in the history of science before. We were able to develop a 10-minute rapid diagnostic test for Ebola. That is the only test which is today approved by the US FDA and WHO. So the introduction of that test actually in the field, knowing within 10 minutes that somebody was infected or not, was a major turning point to contain the outbreak.
We have the ability to analyze whatever it is that comes into the lab. We have the capacity. Then we have well-prepared protocols that we follow to analyze samples. So I am very confident that we can do that for Nigeria and for Africa also.
I've always had a passion for medicine. I've always had a passion to help the sick, to help children. And then when the World Bank brought this opportunity of empowering young students to become scientists, researchers, I felt this was an opportunity to help my people, to help my fellow Africans, basically. And so I think with my research work, applying molecular techniques, I could actually answer some questions and also help in tackling some issues with malaria, which has been some issues since 1904 or so.
One of the things that as scientists we're looking forward to achieving is the complete eradication of malaria. And one of the things that we have to do to actually achieve that is to understand the various clones circulating in a particular population. And that would influence the kind of vaccines one can develop. So my work is centered on understanding the diversity of Plasmodium falciparum across the country, across Nigeria, and fortunate to be here doing such research.
I'm currently involved in the next generation sequencing platform, where we kind of use that cutting-edge technology to sequence viral genomes. Like for instance, like during the monkeypox outbreak, Lassa fever virus, and all of that.
The first capacity that we should be talking about in Africa is what? It's human resources, brain capacity. I think what we've done is actually to embolden the brains of young Africans to believe in themselves and then believe in their ability to deliver on African problems.
I've been fortunate enough to do my master's abroad, and coming back home doing PhD here, it is wonderful. It is equal to what you can get abroad. It is world class, if I may say that. It is world class.
The second center is in Benin, and health issues. It's to do with reproductive health.
The CERI actually is an acronym for the Center of Excellence in Reproductive Health Innovation. It's one of the ACE programs based at the University of Benin here in Nigeria, and is specifically designed to build capacity in the West African region for research and training in the field of reproductive health, specifically in 4 disciplines: obstetrics and gynecology, public health, nursing, and health economics.
So CERI's mandate was to train health workers, not just in Nigeria, but in the West African sub-region, to be able to tackle these health challenges and then also conduct research.
And we also do short courses for people who are at the point where impact is most needed, the skilled birth attendants, to help to monitor the pregnancy, delivery, and postnatal care of these mothers.
Most of reproductive health burdens such as maternal mortality rate, child mortality, infant mortality are higher in West Africa as compared to other parts of the world. So we felt that one of the reasons why there is such a huge challenge of this huge burden of reproductive health was because of lack of skilled personnel to manage the discipline.
So we have multidisciplinary research groups involving doctors, nurses, sociologists, even health economics, and even lawyers. And we created about 4 or 5 research groups with different focus. One is on quality of maternal mortality, the quality of the kind of services that are being rendered. The second one is on how to improve uptake of family planning. The third one is on controlling abortion. And I think the last one is on HIV/AIDS. which we all know are topical issues that are affecting a lot of women and children, not only in Nigeria, but generally in West Africa and globally too.
Nigeria definitely needs a lot more people trained in reproductive health, as does much of West Africa. So I think the concept behind the whole series is excellent, because this is an area of real need and it could provide a valuable service.
There are plans for us, at least the PhD students, to go for industrial attachment in highbrow universities. So for me, it's a privilege.
And I got into this program with a mindset to actually be part of creating new, inventing new things, being innovative in my pursuit. And SERI has created a platform for me achieving this purpose.
SERI actually looked at thematic areas such as family planning, HIV/AIDS, maternal mortality. And these diseases have been found to be the core generating forces of the vicious cycle of poverty.
SERI is a special center, a center for innovation in reproductive health issues. So if you want to undertake a program, you would want to go to a specialized center. And I think that is why most of them, the Gambian students, the foreign students that we have, they are mainly from Gambia. That is why they came.
When we came here, we were very enlightened about the program, about maternal health, child health, and how to tackle the problems that Africans are facing, especially the Gambia.
I believe that when I get back to my country, the Gambia, I'll be able to make an impact through advocacy and research to make sure that things that are a burden in reproductive health, especially maternal morbidity and mortality, is scaled down to a reasonable amount.
Here, students are compulsorily moved to go for internships, either outside the country. Some students have gone to Harvard, some have gone to Kenya, some have gone to Ghana, because we believe that these graduates must be ready for the industry when they graduate. So that anybody that gets the SERI, Masters or PhD can be sure that he can practice this profession anywhere in the world.
The whole idea is to have a holistic approach to the problems of reproductive health.
The next center of excellence is in Jos, University of Jos, and it is on Piper Medicine.
Africa Center of Excellence, University of Jos, is more into phytomedicine research. And phytomedicine, we are talking about the herbs that are used all over the world by especially the rural population.
Almost everybody now wants to use herbs or herbal products, and we want to make it the best for them to use.
We have been working closely with traditional medicine practitioners in the past, and we simply leverage on that. And there are several ongoing research projects in the area of phytomedicine development.
What we are really investigating is how effective is this plant leaf we've chosen. If you say something has medicinal properties, the best place and the basic to start is the phytochemical quantification.
We look at plant components that could have the active ingredients for vaccines or for drugs too to be developed. So this machine can analyze and dictate active ingredients from plant source and even animal sources that could be used for drug discovery and development.
If there is a claim that this plant has this activity, now the only source of establishing that fact is with the use of animals. So you can administer the drug preparation or the extract. Once injected, you can establish that, I have observed that this plant has this activity or that activity, that this is the effect of the extract on the animal when administered.
That of late has become very expensive. How to keep rats and the rest of them. Even the space is also a problem. Also, the recent human rights problem. By the time we do research in this part of the world, they will tell us, no, we did not follow the ethical way of doing it, that the rights of the animals have been abused.
We now thought of another model, the fly model, in the sense that the fly has about 75% genome similarity with the human. For that reason, we can study psychiatric problems with the fly, can study diabetic problems, hypertension, and so on.
So more than 100 years ago, the developers have started using this fly called Drosophila. Actually, molecular science started with it in terms of animals. And the gene of these flies was even cloned before that of human being. The genome was completely known before that of human being. So recently, with the help of this African Center of Excellence, we got to know about it. And we have now come to the knowledge of using it instead of the rat to do what we call preclinical trials, testing for toxicity.
We have one anti-fertility drug. So you just take 2 capsules and the woman is prevented from pregnancy for 1 year. We have tested so many of these herbs for diabetes, hypertension, and cardiac problems.
The center has also successfully, and we announce this with every sense of accomplishment, joy, and happiness, has been able to develop the anti-snake vaccine successfully.
One of the advantages of this vaccine is that unlike the ASV, conventional ASV, it's heat resistant. So it can be carried around even under extreme temperatures, up to 40 degrees, 50 degrees. And not only that, it has activity on different species of the snakes. So whether it's cobra, whether it's viper, in fact, it neutralizes the venoms of these snakes. So you can see that in this center, we have come up with what we need and what will serve the population, especially the rural population.
If we want to heal malaria, they tell us to take leaves, to take roots of plants, any different plants. But we know that it is not every chemical in this plant who are need to heal the malaria. This center will help us to pick specifically the chemical that we need to heal this malaria.
We are globally being recognized as a result of the efforts we are making at this center.
The African Center of Excellence for Neglected Tropical Diseases and Forensic Biotechnology is one of the World Bank centers in Nigeria that is focusing on health. ABU planned and developed this center with funding from the World Bank grant with the hope that we'll use the capacity we have built in biotechnology over the years to help solve some problems that are peculiar to Africa, and that is neglected tropical disease. This group of diseases where there is no major international agenda for solving them, and they affect the livelihood and the health of our people, particularly here in developing countries.
We came up with these neglected tropical diseases. There are several of them, but we felt the 3 pertinent ones: trypanosomiasis, filariasis, and rabies.
Neglected tropical diseases are diseases that affect mostly the rural populace within the nation, and they constitute the largest proportion of our populace.
African trypanosomiasis is a disease of humans and animals. The disease occurs in 37 sub-Saharan African countries. In fact, because of the severe economic losses it causes to the subcontinent, it is referred to as the poverty disease of Africa.
So our focus as a center is how do we address this problem so that the larger populace will be taken care of in terms of their health, in terms of their social impact, and in terms of the economy.
I am working on one of the neglected tropical diseases, which is lymphocytic filariasis. This lymphocytic filariasis, when it catches a person, some of the signs are in the male, the scrotum becomes enlarged, and in the women or in the ladies, it is the breast that becomes large. And for both male and female, one of the limbs sometimes becomes swollen.
The major vector that carry the organism to humans is mosquito. A mosquito lives essentially where you have bushy environment or stagnant water, flowing water. So that's why it affects mostly the rural dwellers.
I'm trying to investigate the potential immunogenicity of vaccine, third generation vaccine precisely, from a particular gene in Trypanosoma congolensis.
One of the reasons why we're researching into rabies is to be able to understand the pathogenesis, i.e. how the disease develops in the host, to also understand its epidemiology, i.e. its distribution in the major reservoir and major vector, which happens to be dogs.
So what we are trying to do is actually to get information that will tell the public that, look, you have dogs in your house, you're trading them or you're rearing them for pet purpose or possibly to be slaughtered someday. You need to know that they could be apparently looking healthy, but be walking around with the rabies virus. And if you are not careful during the course of maybe trying to play with them or walking around with them, they could be stimulated and maybe beat you. There they spread the disease, because the transmission of the disease, the major part of transmission of the disease is through their saliva.
Basically, I collected blood samples on filter paper from cattle in 2 regions in the Gambia. And then I also collected retrospective data from the ITC, International Trypanosome Center. So basically, we wanted to know what are the species that are prevalent in the Gambia from the retrospective analysis.
And what we are doing now is to really look at what are the issues that affect us and what are the solutions we can provide as researchers.
We are hoping that we will not just be the only center, but we'll be able to provide the manpower that will be able to man similar centers that will spring up in the future.
These are the 10 centers of excellence, 3 in agriculture, 3 in STEM, and 4 in health issues in this country.
So giving Africa the capacity to solve its own problems, that's what really was the rationale for the Centers of Excellence. We should have less consultants coming in, but have more capacity in Africa to drive its own development.
A lot of times when you interact with people from outside Nigeria, they tell you that Nigeria is not a safe place to go to. But we have had students coming from everywhere to study here. Some are in Jos, some are in Bayero University Kano, some are in Port Harcourt, some are in Benin and everywhere. So when these students graduate and they go back home, they tell everybody that, look, I studied in Nigeria for 2 years, 3, 4, 5 years, and there's no problem.
So in general, the quality for us, we are happy. It meets the national standard of the various university senates, because it is the university that awards these degrees.
watch an e-case, which is a digital case. Remember, a case is a story. It could be a descriptive story, response, critical thinking also, which was why we had I agree, I don't agree. And from a practical point of view, I assume each of us can take away some learning on emotional intelligence and leadership. Is that not so? Probably in a quicker, smoother, and practical way. And I want to believe that if we want our students to be change agents in society, we want them to use that facility of critical thinking. Not so? But if we're giving a lecture, we basically are making it easy for them. Of course, as our professor has said, we can go from a lecture to a discussion. Or let's say, probably that would be better. So that we're not just using one method, but we're using a method that is more effective for delivering the learning outcomes. The important thing is, what are the learning outcomes? And what is the most effective way I can deliver the learning outcomes? And if your learning outcomes require students to be able to critically analyze, to be able to apply, to be able to synthesize new knowledge, I think the case will probably facilitate that better than just a restriction on the lecture method. So that really is the point. We're not saying don't use lectures or use only cases. We're saying, what is the outcome, learning outcome? And what is the more effective method for doing so? And I think really from that little simulation we've had, we have people, you are forced to take a position. You're forced to think. And we also even could deliver a little bit of theory also, and the definition and so on and so forth. So that's it. Now let's see an e-case, which is a digital case. And then let's see what that also brings to the table in terms of teaching. Now, I think this has been sent to you earlier, but probably some of us have prepared it. How many of us have prepared this case? Can I see your hands? What? Yes. You watched the case or the video? Okay, not too many people. Okay, we'll take the time to go through the video. It's a short one. This is a short e-case developed by PASGA and some of our colleagues who are here. So we'll go through it. There are, what's it now? 2 types of assets or 3 types of assets on the case, on the e-case. We have the narrative, and then we have video, and I think we also have a picture asset somewhere in the case. But essentially, again, the case is telling a story, which is a template for, learning. Now, before I leave that point, what we're really supposed to do is to facilitate learning rather than teaching. You could see that because of the interventions that were being delivered, could I force Prof to change his mind? I could not so. It would be necessary to bring something for him to be persuaded, or either to change or to modify, or to say, oh, I can, where I'm standing, I can do it better. So it's not about teaching, it's about learning. You can't force people to learn, right? You can teach all you wish, but whether they're going to learn is a different thing. And I think some people who said Professor Segun had emotional intelligence would probably not say so by now. Maybe some would still say I stand on my grounds, but their grounds will not be supported by theory, not so. Aha. So it's about this is an adult class. I couldn't lead you by the nose, not so. So the case method and the case discussion is probably more effective. Rather than I lecture and say, well, he's saying his own. And let's even assume we have sociologists, social psychologists. They are going to say this fellow he's just scratching the surface, not so. But the discussion, they can't say he's scratching the surface because we are going into the issue. So I may not be a sociologist, I may not be a social psychologist, but I can facilitate a discussion on it that will be useful to the sociologists, social psychologists, and others. So that's really what we want to do. Let's go to the case. We're going to have someone read the narrative to us. Then Tiberius will help us with the video asset. So who would like to, we'll just different persons, who would like to start? You help us read the narrative. Somebody volunteer? Do we have anyone with a broadcaster's voice that's close to my own, not so? Or better than my own? Yes.
Female genital mutilation, FGM, associated with lots of suffering for the female gender among communities that practice it. Apart from the pain of the cat, it is a source of socioeconomic inequality between the cat and the non-cat women, as well as between practicing and non-practicing communities. Among some communities, the cat marks the transformation from a girl into a woman ready for marriage. And in some cases, girls drop out of school so as to be married. This affects their employability. Consequently, women in these communities are relatively less educated. This has narrowed their opportunities to the job market. FGM is always a traumatic experience. Immediate complications can include severe pain, shock, hemorrhage, bleeding, tetanus or sepsis, urine retention, open sores in the genital region, and injury to nearby genital tissue. Long-term consequences can include recurrent bladder and urinary tract infections, cysts, infertility, an increased rate of childbirth complications and newborn deaths, and the need for later surgeries. For example, type 3 infibulations need to be cut open later so as to facilitate sexual intercourse and childbirth. There are a number of efforts aimed at addressing the challenges that result from the practice. Most of these efforts are intended to end the practice. In certain instances, local efforts have led to global outcomes. These are the efforts that this case focuses on in order to demonstrate how local concerns are propelled to become global agenda using the case of FGM in Kenya. The e-case illustrates how local concerns about the negative effects of FGM developed to acquire national level interest and eventually to become a global agenda.
Thank you very much.
Not so long ago, you could walk through Nairobi and just about every woman you meet could tell you a personal story of circumcision and early marriage, a practice once common among many Kenyan communities. It's not so common now. More and more parents have decided it's simply wrong. But head to some of Kenya's poorer rural areas, it's a different story. At just one school in Kajiado, 106 kilometers south of Nairobi, 62 girls dropped out last year to have children. Most of them had been married off after undergoing circumcision. Tradition says this surgery transforms a girl into a woman, marriage material, to be sold like an asset. The procedure is brutal.
The Maasai culture do the FGM in a horrific way. They circumcise a girl without any medication. They use a razor blade and they cut the whole part of clitoris, the whole part, until they touch the bone. At least somebody can lose 2 to 2.5 pints of blood when the circumcision is done. After 12 hours, they take you outside and see whether the circumcision was done well. And if it was not done well, they repeat it again.
It's hard enough to listen to the description, but imagine going through it. Some girls are just 6 years old. Then comes the marriage.
Now, when you find a girl at 8 years, like the one we rescued during December holidays, 8 years old, married.
And somebody said, don't say prefer, but let me still say. Or when would you use an e-case? Would you prefer the e-case? Comparing the written, which do you think is more effective? Anyone? Yes, sir.
I think there should be a combination of both. What I could see is the rendition of the story being acted upon by the scenes that we watched made it very, very clear.
Made it very clear.
Yeah, it's very clear. Now, if this is done to a learner, in fact, I think that would have been a very good learning tool, because we have